Destiny 2's decline was not caused by greed or bad leadership alone. It was caused by a strategic bet that Destiny could coast while Bungie transformed itself into something bigger. Everyone wants one villain for Destiny 2's decline. Pete Parsons, Sony, greedy executive, or even Justin Truman's "don't overdeliver" comment. And honestly, I get it. It's way more satisfying to say one person ruined everything, but I think that explanation is way too simple. Destiny 2 did not decline because one executive pressed the kill game button. It declined because Bungie made a much bigger bet. Destiny could keep making money while Bungie chased its next future. The uncomfortable part is that strategy probably made sense on a spreadsheet. Business leaders look at financials, revenue, margins, retentions, headcount, and opportunity cost. They're asking, can Destiny survive with less investment? Can resources move toward Marathon? Can the old game fund the new one? That does not make him evil inherently. That is literally what business leadership does. But that is also the problem. Because business leaders can read these numbers, but the vision has to come from the people closer to the game. The directors, the producers, the developers, and the people who actually understand why players care. A spreadsheet can tell you if something is profitable. It cannot tell you if the game has soul. This is where Bungie's strategy becomes obvious. Destiny was no longer being treated like its future. It was being treated like the machine that would fund the future. That future was Marathon. Bungie did not want to stay the Destiny studio. They wanted to become a multi-IP company. And to do that, Destiny had to keep generating revenue while Bungie built something else. That was the bet. Not that Destiny would explode again. Not that Destiny would reinvent itself. Just that Destiny would keep the lights on. This is why Justin Truman's "don't overdeliver" comment became such a nuclear moment.
Over-delivery is actually dangerous for a train station. With every release that you put out there, you're setting a pattern for your community.
Maybe it was taken out of context. Maybe internally, it meant something more reasonable. But to players, it felt true. Seasonal content became predictable, big surprises became smaller, and the game still had great moments, but overall, the feeling changed. Destiny used to feel like Bungie was trying to blow your mind. Eventually, it started feeling like Bungie was trying to hit minimum amount of hype needed to keep the store open. And for a live service game, that is deadly. Players can forgive bugs, they can forgive bad seasons, they can forgive balance problems. What they cannot forgive is the forever feeling that the studio's real attention is somewhere else. Former Bungie executive Mark Noseworthy gave a useful way to understand business decisions. He explained that projects are often evaluated through opportunity cost. What gets delayed? How much does it cost? Can parts be outsourced? Will enough players actually engage with it? That matters because it suggests many controversial Destiny decisions were not just greed, they were resource decisions. Bungie had limited people, limited time, and multiple projects competing for attention. And once Marathon became the future, Destiny was not just competing with other games, it was competing with Bungie's own future. The failure was not Bungie stopped caring overnight, the failure was that Bungie underestimated how much ambition Destiny still needed. Destiny's audience did not want a maintenance product. They wanted evolution, they wanted surprise, they wanted the feeling that something massive was still coming. But Bungie seemed to believe Destiny could survive with one smaller, safer, more efficient content creation vision. That was the mistake. A live service game cannot feel like it's being maintained by accountants. Even if the numbers make sense, the players will feel the difference. For many players, Pete Parsons became the face of Bungie's decline. That story is simple. Bungie underdelivered, Sony paid $3.6 billion, Parsons walked away a lot richer, Destiny suffered. And I understand why people are angry. When a beloved game declines and executives still win financially, people are going to be furious. But I also think Pete Parsons' hate became too convenient, because it turns a company-wide failure into one guy. Pete bad, Destiny dead, case closed. That is satisfying, but I do not think that it explains everything. For example, we do not fully understand Bungie's exact financial position before Sony came in. Development costs were rising, COVID-era growth created weird expectations, and a lot of studios were looking for partners, funding, or long-term security. So maybe the Sony deal was not just a cash out at the time. Maybe it bought Bungie time. Maybe it gave Bungie the resources to keep Destiny going longer than it otherwise would have been. That does not mean Pete Parsons deserves no criticism either. But it does mean the story may be more complicated than one executive got rich and killed the game. Moreover, here's a part that people ignore. If Pete Parsons was the whole problem, why did the problem not end when he stepped down? Destiny's major live service future was not ended under Pete Parsons. The decision happened afterward while Justin Truman, the over-delivery guy, stepped in. So maybe the issue was not just Pete. Maybe Bungie as a company had already accepted the new reality. Destiny was no longer the main bet, Marathon was. Sony also deserves blame here too. Bungie did not force Sony to spend $3.6 billion. Sony had the financials, they had the player data, they had the projections, they had the leadership meetings, so if Bungie overestimated its future, Sony either agreed with that assessment or believed the risk was worth taking. That was not one executive tricking a global corporation. This was a strategic bet made by both companies. Also, let's keep in mind the timing. The acquisition happened during the live service gold rush. Every publisher wanted reoccurring revenue. Every executive wanted the next Fortnite. Every company wanted a game that can make money forever. And on paper, Destiny probably looked like one of the safest bets in gaming. Proven franchise, loyal audience, great gunplay, years of live service experience. And on paper, it probably looked beautiful. But that's the problem. Destiny's future looked better on paper than it felt in-game. Sony's actions suggest it still sees value in Bungie. In its May 2026 earnings report, Sony acknowledged all major impairment losses related to fixed assets were taken into account, except for the potential goodwill impairment losses in the future. That sounds pretty brutal. Sony is basically saying there could be more impairment losses as it relates to goodwill, so that's player sentiment or how players view Bungie as a company. And Sony also highlighted Marathon's player reception, retention, and future content plans. And this matters because if Sony believed Bungie was simply bad leadership and wasted money, it'd be looking for its exit. Instead, Sony is still talking about retention, content expansion, and long-term growth of Marathon. That tells me Sony still sees Marathon as the play. This is where Marathon either becomes Bungie's comeback story or the funniest corporate tragedy imaginable. If Marathon works, Bungie can say, "See, we're building the future." But if Marathon fails, Destiny players are going to look back and say, "So you put our game on life support for that." And this is the nightmare scenario. Marathon cannot just be a decent extraction shooter, it has to prove that Bungie found the next thing. Because if it doesn't, then Bungie cannot pivot into the near future. It just fumbled the game that already had one. The best way I see Bungie succeeding in this new era is adopting the Fortnite strategy. Back when Fortnite originally released, it was called Save the World. It was a PvE only game that had Minecraft-esque building aspects incorporated into the game. After years of mediocrity with its Save the World, Epic Games decided it would release Fortnite Battle Royale, a completely separate game mode from the original Save the World franchise. This is what Bungie has to do with Marathon. Extraction shooters, especially in the ultra-competitive niche that Marathon resides in, is not going to be mass appealing, and in my opinion, is not going to bring in sufficient revenue for the studio. They have to pivot into a separate game mode that attracts a wider audience, whether that is a PvE game mode, or it is even a Battle Royale. This is what Bungie needs Marathon to be. Not a safe product, not a polished product, a real pivot, a game that proves the sacrifice was worth it. And the lesson in all of this is not just that business is bad, every studio makes business decisions. The lesson is that business strategy cannot become more visible than creative vision. You can chase ROI, you can optimize resources, you can manage costs. But if nobody protects the soul of the game, players will feel it. And Destiny players felt it. Destiny did not decline because Bungie made business decisions. Destiny declined because the business decisions became louder than the game itself. So when people ask what killed Destiny 2, I don't think the answer is just greed. Greed played a role, bad leadership played a role, bad communication definitely played a role, but the bigger failure was strategic. Bungie bet that Destiny could coast while the studio chased something bigger. Sony bought into that bet. The business logic may have made sense on paper, but the player experience did not. And now Marathon has to justify everything. Because if Marathon succeeds, maybe history remembers this as a painful but necessary pivot. But if Marathon fails, Destiny 2 will not look like a game that Bungie mismanaged, it will look like a game Bungie sacrificed for a future that never showed up.